is Mimi Williams. Mimi Williams is a longtime community volunteer, political activist, and media commentator. With roots in the labor movement, she has been an active participant in feminist, anti-poverty, and anti-racism movements in Edmonton for over 30 years. Thank you, Mimi, for being here.
Well, I've held a couple of megaphones in my time, having been around a few picket lines, but I've never had to juggle speaking notes, so let's see how we do.
Hold your speaking notes?
Yeah. Okay. Sisters, brothers, cousins, I'm so happy to see you all here today and honored to be sharing the stage with so many inspiring women. There's never a more gratifying political action than one that I've made with my sisters. And to be clear, your presence here today is a profoundly political act, no matter what your political stripe. Whenever people take to the streets, or in this case, in front of our provincial legislature, they're there to make a statement. They're there to make demands. They are determined to be heard. Are you determined to be heard? Good, me too. The organizers of today's event asked me to talk a little bit about my experiences as a community organizer and a political activist. It turns out you can't cram 30 years into a 5-minute speech, but I'm going to try to touch on a couple of things that are really important pieces that I think will bring us back to why we're here today. 22 years ago, the Canadian Labour Congress and the National Action Committee on the Status of Women came together to organize a national women's march against poverty. Under the banner, "For Bread and Roses, for Jobs and Justice," 2 caravans departed from Vancouver and Newfoundland, respectively, on May 1st, 1996. And 5 weeks later, they met up in Ottawa. We had demands. Some of them might sound a little familiar to you. We demanded a significant hike to minimum wages to help address the gender income gap. We demanded a national child care program. We demanded increased educational opportunities for women and girls. We called for pay equity legislation in Alberta and Saskatchewan because back then they were the only 2 provinces that didn't have it. We demanded national standards for social assistance. They were being cut severely across the country, but nowhere more severely than right here in Alberta. We called for additional supports for people with disabilities and a significant influx of government funding for affordable housing. We called for supports for services to help women and children whose lives were impacted by domestic violence. We called for rights for LGBTQ people. You know, all of the things that we're still calling for today. Over 100,000 women directly participated in that event, including about 2,000 here in Edmonton. It was the largest march in Canadian history, women's march, or probably any march, and it was my pleasure to co-chair the steering committee for the Edmonton event with Mary Burley, a powerhouse of a woman, an anti-poverty activist who worked as a social worker at the Boyle Street Co-op. Mary also served as the president of the Alberta Black Women's Association and Change for Children. She was a founding member of the Canadian Women's Health Network. For our event, we planned a huge picnic in Giovanni Cabato Park to welcome the caravan. It was a weeknight, and we knew that if we wanted to get a large number of women and children there, it was supper time, we're going to need to feed them. At one planning meeting, when one of our colleagues suggested that running out of food would send a powerful message, I got a little bit PO'd. As a struggling single mom at the time, I took exception to the idea that leaving people hungry, particularly children, was an appropriate way to make a grand political statement. And I remember Mary taking me aside and telling me to have patience with people. To have patience with people who have no idea about the struggles that some folks experience. Forgive them and teach them, she told me. She had a quiet strength and a wicked sense of humor, and she led by example when she counseled others like me to never give up. month following the march. And I thank the Canadian Women's Health Network for immortalizing these words of hers. She wrote, "We might have a different color of our bodies. We might have different shape of the eyes, but we are all the same. We grow in skills and understanding. We grow in appreciation of each other and of this global community. We do have a big task ahead of us, but I have no doubts when I look into the eyes and hear the hearts and touch every one of you that we can achieve the goals, no matter how difficult it may be." Last February at City Hall for the Black History Month celebration, I was standing between two friends. One was Riakesh Walters, who some of you may know. The other was another fine feminist, Todd James, and we were standing listening to Youth Poet Laureate Nazra Adem. I see you. And I turned to Todd and I pointed at Riakesh and Nazra, two fierce, young, wonderful women with I've been so lucky to cross paths. And I said, "I think I was born 30 years too early." And he replied, "They're up there because you came 30 years before them." A little bit, I'll tell you, because what he said was true. And what is also true is that I'm up here because Mary Burley and so many others came 30 years before me. And that's the message that I want to leave here. As we organize and agitate and stand together in our demands to be heard, we have to understand that we do so not just for ourselves, but for all the women and girls who will follow us. We have to understand that some battles take a lifetime and won't necessarily end, regardless of who is in power politically. I'm glad to see Minister Gray here, because I also want to point out that we still don't have pay equity legislation in Alberta, the only province in this country. And it's time. There are other battles, like control over our reproductive health, that we think we won a long, long time ago. But guess what? And look south. They'll keep popping up. They're going to keep popping up to be fought all over again. And they will be fought. And looking at all of you today, I have no doubt that it's going to be women on the front lines fighting for social justice, because it always has been. And I have no doubt that we will prevail. Our struggles require more than a rally once a year, although this is wonderful. They also require more than us voting every 4 years, although this is important. We need to fight for equality every single day, for childcare, for housing, for supports for seniors and those with disabilities, for a society that won't tolerate racism, for equal pay for our work. And as we do, we need to be kind to each other. We need to forgive each other and teach each other. While we keep fighting for each other and for those who will come after us, let's nurture each other. For we can never give up, because it's only when we give up that we lose. So if you ever feel defeated, and trust me folks, I have, lots, take a rest, and then get back up and fight again. Let Maya Angelou feed your soul. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness. But still, like air, I'll rise.